Hey guys, the Network Berg here, hope you're doing well. So this video is a little bit different from my usual stuff where I cover MikroTik configurations. This time we're going to be looking at how to bring up a pfSense firewall in a virtual environment for our own labbing purposes to better understand the technology, what it is, how to just get around it, and how fun it is. Now, I'm coming into this as a complete noob. I've never worked on pfSense before. This is actually my first video on it as well. I did set up a VM earlier today just to test around with to see how quick and easy it is. And it's very quick and easy. It took me roughly 15 to 20 minutes to figure everything out with issues like problems that I was having. And I'm just creating this video so that I can help you avoid making these problems from the very beginning. So let's jump into the video and have a good time with pfSense. So let's think about how we're going to install a pfSense VM for us to lab with and potentially just become better at firewalling and other networking concepts. Now, what I can recommend is firstly going to their website. So please go to pfSense.org and this will bring you to their page. And obviously there's a bunch of tabs that you can explore. You can go look at the Getting Started tab. And what I definitely recommend from getting started is when you scroll down, you can see there's different types of places that you can store this on hardware, on cloud, but definitely get to the documentation. So open up this Get documentation in a different tab, bookmark it like I have, so that you can use this quickly for reference whenever you're stuck on something and you want to figure something out. There is also a PDF that you can download so that you can read up on any of the concepts on your own time, maybe on your phone if you ever want to just go through it. It is 2,000 plus pages long, which shows you how much information there is on pfSense. It's not a little baby firewall. This is a proper firewall that's got all your needs covered. So what can we do now? Besides this tab, you can also maybe just go to your community tab and join any communities that you'd like to be a part of. Maybe you can sign up to the forum. You can join them on IRC for instant messaging. I would actually think that they should update this to Discord as well, because I think that is a more modern platform, but it's definitely there. You can use IRC to chat with. And then they've got their social networks. So one place I definitely might recommend is joining the subreddit for pfSense. All right, so now that we have the community sorted out, how do we download this appliance so that we can run it in VMware, which is what I'm going to be using. I'm going to go to the Downloads tab, and then I'm just going to download the latest image. So it does run version 2.6.0, which is the most current version. You can select your architecture. So I will be using AMD 64-bit. And your installer, I will be using this as an ISO. Now your mirror, this you can just choose whichever mirror is closest to you. It will obviously mean that you will download it a little bit quicker if you select the closest mirror. Then you can just click on the download button and then it should download. Now I've already downloaded pfSense. If I go to my downloads folder, you can actually see that there is a pfSense here, an ISO image that I can mount into my VMware. So I'm going to do that now. So let's navigate to VMware. I'll open it up, and then from VMware, we're just going to create a new virtual machine. So I'll do that, and I'll just continue with the prompt. Now, very important, you will set it that you will install the operating system later, and this might be on Linux by default. Make sure that you change it to other. It does not run Linux, it runs FreeBSD. So you'll go to other, and then if you scroll up a bit, you'll see there's a FreeBSD 12 64-bit. So that's what I'm going to use, and I'll just continue on. Now I can give my virtual machine a name. I'll call this pfSense. And your location will obviously be where it's storing this virtual machine. So I'll just store it somewhere where I've got a little bit of space. So I might go into this drive, and I might create a new folder and just call it pfSense VM. And then I'll just select this newly created folder, and I'll continue on with the setup. Now I can give it a disk size. Doesn't need too much disk space, but I'll just push that to 30 gigabytes. I'll continue on, and now we can customize our hardware. Now this I definitely recommend, because there is some quirks if you don't add an additional NIC to your pfSense firewall, you might struggle a little bit like I did when I did the first setup the first time around before making this video. So just give it a bit of RAM. I might give this 1 gig, maybe 2 gig. Let's give it 2 gig. I'll give it additional processors if I want to. And I'll also just add a network adapter. So I'll leave the basic network adapter in and say it is a NATed address, just so that this can connect up to my hypervisor's network and actually get internet access out immediately. Then we don't need to fiddle around too much. But I will add an additional network adapter for my LAN interface, because you need to specify which is your WAN interface when you set this up and what is your LAN interface going to be. So this second adapter, I'm just going to add this to one of my VM networks. So these are just virtual networks. You can tweak them as you want. So any devices that you might add to a, let's say VMnet 19 as an example, they would all in essence be able to communicate with each other as if they were on a switch. So I'm just going to add this onto the VMnet 19, and I'm also going to go to my new CD-DVD, and I'm actually going to select that ISO that I downloaded. So let's find it. And now that that's been added, I will now just close this window and I will finish. And once this has been finished, I can start up this VM. So you will just have to follow along with some prompts. I might just skip around where we're just having downtime, but in essence, you're just waiting for some prompts. All right, now we can just continue with the setup. I'll just hit enter for accept. I'll tell it that I want to install. So I'll hit enter again. I'll continue with the default key map, but if you're using a different keyboard type, you might select your type and just select that and continue. I'll do the auto ZFS. I'm not going to do any of these more advanced setups. And I will just hit install. And I'll leave this as Stripe. There is stuff for mirroring and RAID stuff, but we'll just do a very basic setup with no redundancy. And now I can just specify, I'll hit spacebar here just to say that I'm going to format this drive in essence to install pfSense on. So now it's going to install pfSense. So now I can just wait for this progress to finish. And we continue just waiting here. There's nothing too special about this process yet. The installation is now finished. Before exiting the installer, would you like to open shell in a new system to make any final manual modifications? I'm just going to say no, I don't want to enter the shell yet. So I'll just reboot. And then once the device boots back up, then pfSense will actually be installed. So let's just wait for the boot sequence. And it's still just busy booting here. Nearly there. All right, so now we are in the prompt section. So there's a few options that you can select here. You could even enter the shell from here to do some extra configuration and check out some details. But as you can see, it has actually already pre-assigned some addresses on my EM0 and EM1 addresses or interfaces. Let me just see if I can maybe highlight that. So we have a WAN interface, which is that first network adapter that I added, and it's already added the DHCP on it, and it's already obtained an IP address, which is nice. And then we have the LAN interface, which is that secondary NIC that we added, and it's already assigned the default IP of 192.168.1.1/24 for that. Now, something that I might want to do, and I'm not sure if this is already running DHCP, but what I could do is I could say set interfaces IP address. So I'll select option 2. I'll then select LAN, which is what I'd like to configure. And now I can give it an IP address, whatever I want to make it. So let me maybe update this IP to something else. Maybe I want to make it 172.16.0.0 or .1/24. I can hit enter. And I can just continue on because I don't want to change anything for the WAN gateway. I'm not using IPv6, so I just continue on. And I'd ask you, do you want to enable DHCP server on the LAN? So for this, I'm going to say yes. It's going to ask you what is the start address, so from which IP range is it going to start assigning, or what's your IP pool. So I'll say 172.16.0.50 is where I want to start, and then I can specify the end range, which is 172.16.0.100. That's what I like to do, just 50 clients. Now, do you want to revert to HTTP as the web configurator protocol? I'll just say yes, and I'll hit enter. And now in theory, any devices that I connect onto this interface should be able to connect on HTTP on the GUI to manage the device and also look at a few things, which is what we're going to do now. So I'm going to actually just exit here, and I just need to connect a machine on that same interface. So what I might do is my Ubuntu VM, I might just power on. But before I start it up, I just want to edit some of the settings here, because its network adapter, instead of being part of that same NATed pool, I'm also just going to throw this in the VMnet 19 interface. So now in theory, this VM has been connected to that pfSense firewall. So I should be obtaining an IP address from the pfSense, and I should be able to access it. So let me just power on this Ubuntu VM, and let's just maximize this. And now the cool bit is actually going to start. I actually love this part where we're going to access the firewall for the first time on the GUI. So I'm just logging in on my end. Right, so I'm in my Ubuntu VM. And first thing I want to do is just check, have I actually obtained an IP address from my pfSense firewall? And I can see I did obtain 172.16.0.50. So that is a very good sign. I'd like to see, can I ping 172.16.0.1, which is the IP address of the pfSense? And I can, so we're off to a very good start. So how do I actually access the web GUI now? I'll just head into my browser of choice. And then from my browser, I will just go HTTP, and I'll type in the IP of the pfSense device, so 172.16.0.1. I'll have a prompt for a username and password, and your username is admin with the password being pfSense. Now when you log in for the first time, it's actually going to tell you, hey, the password needs to be changed. So I highly recommend you do change that. But before that, let's just run this pfSense setup. This is a setup wizard. So it's going to just explain to you some details here. Now we can set a host name. I'm just going to make this tmb-pfSense. My domain, I'm not going to set anything. You can put in some DNS servers if you'd like. Time zone. So this is your NTP server that you're going to be using to connect to. But let me select my time zone. So I am in Africa, Johannesburg. So let me select that. Go next. Now on this screen, wide area network information will be configured. So this is where you're setting your WAN details. It is currently set on DHCP, and it's fine for my setup because this is connecting to my hypervisor out to the internet. So it already works. It should already have internet access. But what's nice is you can configure stuff like a static IP if needed, or you can even configure triple PoE on it so that you could connect this to your ISP's modem or router, and then you could connect to them using triple PoE, and then you could have a WAN IP or a public IP actually living on your pfSense firewall. So that is pretty cool stuff. But I'm just going to continue next. Your LAN IP address. So this I've already set, and my subnet's already right. Now we can set our admin password bit here. I'm just going to make this B123, set it something different. And I can click on reload, and then the pfSense will just reload some of the services. It won't actually even reboot the firewall, it'll just stay active. And there you go, we are done. We can click on finish, or I can click on check for updates, but it should tell me that I'm already on the most up-to-date version, which is going to be grand. Now, I'm just checking to make sure that I am. And there you can see it says I am on the latest version. There is some development builds and all that stuff, but we're not going to be changing anything. Actually, it's still busy figuring out. Unable to check for updates. That's not good. Let's just quickly go through some of these tabs at the top, because you need to understand where everything is in essence. Now your system relates to everything regarding the pfSense itself. So here you will do stuff like your cert manager, set up high availability, you can log out, you can check the routing, you can run the setup wizard again from here if you need to, or even the user manager, configure additional accounts or set up stuff like people to authenticate against Radius or whatnot. You've got your interfaces. Now currently I just have my WAN and LAN interface, but if you had additional interfaces, you could have them here and you can give them assignments and say what interface is. We've got our firewall section, which is going to be responsible for all of your firewall policies, as well as stuff like your NAT rules for your where you're masquerading stuff, or even your port forwarding, or you've got stuff like virtual IPs, aliases, or even traffic shapers, which is really cool. Now the services tab I really like, because this is going to be where a lot of your additional plugins that you might install, or let me say add-ons that you install, they will typically reside in your services section. And here you can see these are like your DHCP or your NTP, or if you want to run a triple PoE server from this, you could. So there's so much that you can do from here. We've got a VPN tab, so obviously we can set up IPsec and OpenVPN and L2TP. So we have those functionalities, although I do see that the L2TP is more or less as a server, it's not really as a client. I'll have to just do a little bit of research to see if this is client capable, so that you, let's say the pfSense server could connect to an MPLS network and be a part of that via L2TP. And obviously there is the OpenVPN here as well. Now status is quite nice, because this will just give you a lot of useful information regarding your interface statuses, if they're up, if they're down, what their IP addresses are, if you can pick up any type of errors, how much packets have come in and out. So that's actually really nice. And we can do stuff like monitoring, where it brings up a nice little graph to tell you maybe stuff like how much bandwidth is being used. So this is quite cool. And last tab that I just want to go over is the diagnostics. So this is obviously where you might be running a lot of your troubleshooting stuff. If you want to do stuff like trace routes or pings, or you want to have a look at your IP table or the routing. So here you can see I can go to the diagnostic and routes, and we can see what type of routes are configured or routing is configured on this device. We can have a look at the ARP table to see what other devices are maybe picked up via ARP. There I can see that my Ubuntu machine is picked up in the ARP entry, so this is quite cool. I could even run a ping from here to my Ubuntu machine to see if I actually get a response. So let's just quickly do that. And that works. So this is really awesome. And this is just a very general and broad overview of all of the options. I'd now just like to show you something else that I think is extremely cool. All right, so earlier I hinted at packages or add-ons that you can add to the firewall, and this I actually like because it gives you this modular control of adding specific things that you might need for your firewall. You can make this a baseline so that all your firewalls, if you ever deploy them, add these packages so that things can work. But I gave you a brief rundown of the stuff that you can do, and something I saw that I cannot do on the firewall with its base packages is I can't do BGP or advanced routing stuff. If I go to the routing for the system, it's just basic static routes and such that we can set. So how can we fix that? Well, let's add a package for it. We can go to the package manager under system. I can see what packages are already installed, and I can also navigate to my available packages. And from here, I can search for a package that I'd like to install. So let's say I want to do BGP. I can just look for BGP. And there I can see something does exist that allows me to do BGP OSPF, OSPF 6, which is actually just OSPF v3. And BFD is also in there if I recall. So let's just hit the install. I can tell it I've confirmed I want this. Please give me this thing. So now it's going to connect to the repository, and it's actually going to retrieve all of the package files and install it on my pfSense device without me even having to restart or reboot or anything. You'll see how freaking cool this is. So I'm just going to wait for this to finish. And we see this is the third package, and there's 8 of them. So this shouldn't take too long. But just think about the additional functionality I'm adding on the fly by just adding a package for it. How cool is that? So whatever I need, I can get. So I'm just waiting for this to finish. It's nearly done. And without me even having to do a single reboot. My options or packages will be available. All right, there's extracting, installing, and it's done and dusted. So now if I actually navigate to the services tab, I can see there's a lot more options suddenly. Now I can do stuff like BFD. Now I can do stuff like BGP. So if I go into the BGP, here I can see I can enable BGP routing. I can set my local AS, my router ID, you know, stuff that I expect to see in a BGP configuration or in setup. You can configure your neighbors, communities even. RPKI is also there. Oh man, everything is here that I actually want. And besides that, there's these bracketed options that allows you to go to those other services without going to the service tab. So I can go to OSPF and now I can configure OSPF as well. I can set up BFD with the click of a button. So this granularity or this modularity is freaking awesome. Something else I might want to do, and I've made a lot of videos on it recently, and I said I'm not going to make another video on it, but it's not really on it. If I go to the package manager, I can search for something like ta-da, WireGuard. Even WireGuard is on here. So I can now install this WireGuard package, and it will just quickly download it and do the same thing as it just did with BGP or that routing suite that I just installed. And this one is a little bit smaller. I think it should be very quick to install. There we go, done and dusted. Now, since this is a VPN service, the firewall also understands that this is going to go under the VPN tab for me. So if I go to VPN, I will find WireGuard there. And now I can configure WireGuard as if it was on any other equipment or any other vendor that I've shown you guys how to configure WireGuard with. So here I can create a tunnel. I can create my peers. And yes, I have actually tested this and it works. I can connect this pfSense firewall to my MikroTik using WireGuard and have all of those benefits. So this is crazy cool. And I really, really enjoy working on this firewall. Now, I'm just going to end off the video because I just want to give you guys my final thoughts, what I thought about installing this. And I can honestly say this must have been one of the most pain-free installation processes I've ever gone through. It took me roughly 15 minutes to install everything and get it in a working state without even breaking a sweat, without too much issues. I did run into a few issues when I initially did the setup without going through the documentation, like not understanding that I needed the second NIC and also not really knowing what the default login credentials were, but those were relatively quick to pick up, find, and put in. So I'm very happy with how this has turned out. I will definitely be continuing making some more content on pfSense, but I think it is a phenomenal piece of software / hardware, and I can definitely recommend it to others. So what do you guys think? Do you think pfSense looks promising? Would you like to try it out yourselves? Are you going to? Please feel free to engage in the comment section and discuss with me. Let's talk about it. Is there anything specifically you'd like to see me maybe create videos on? Maybe do BGP using pfSense as well. I really hope to hear from you soon. I'd also like to thank my Patreon and YouTube members who help support the channel financially. And I'd also like to thank you guys, the viewers, who really help drive me to keep making these videos. I have so much fun and I look forward to continue doing this. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.